Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Kernels. My name is Sam Bouwers, consultant for continuing education at the State Library of Iowa, and I'll introduce our guest in just a moment here. But if you don't know about Kernels, each installment in this little series, just a quick pop of professional development, something we think is useful to the Iowa library community, but maybe not worth a whole hour of CE. We get a lot of questions like, have you heard of anyone doing this? What might I be able to do about that? Or here's something cool I did to solve that problem. And we always love to flip those into kernels when we can. So there's a whole playlist on our YouTube channel. You can also find them in Iowa Learns for CE credit, but lots of fun stuff going on all over the state, and kernels is such a cool way to highlight that. So my guest today is Aimee Campbell. And she is the new-ish, we'll say, director at the Albia Public Library. Been there just over a year. November marked a year, I guess. So we were chatting about that before we got started. But our topic today is using grants. And I'll just say by way of introduction that I had the honor of touring the Albia Public Library with Aimee, who is new there, as I said, and has really done a lot to make a lot of changes in that library, a lot of positive changes in a relatively short amount of time. So, and a lot of that done with grant funding. So as we kicked around some different training that we've got going on here in early 2023, we really wanted a practitioner voice to kind of speak to how they've used grants, what that's looked like, what they found to be sort of the best and worst aspects of grant funding. And when we were thinking about possible people, I was like, oh, I really want to get Aimee from Albia, because I do know that very recently they have done a lot of cool stuff. So she is kindly here today to share her thoughts. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to you, Aimee. Can you tell us a little bit more about Albia and the library there?
Yeah, thank you. So I started here in November of 2021 and was really passionate about bringing some changes to the library. We're a small rural community in southern Iowa. And so obviously, just like a lot of other smaller communities, our funding is limited, and that funding has to go a long way. The municipal issues that we have to deal with are ongoing. And so even though our city may want to support us more, or our county may want to support us more, the funds just may not be there. So I knew early on that I wanted to really look hard for other funding sources and just take advantage of every opportunity, whether it be small grants, large grants, things that I can bring to the community, and just be that connection source between the community and the information being not only, what we can find in our resources here, but resources for the community, and just be that bridge between what's available and the community.
I like that point there about not trying to use this to replace city funding or to stop advocating for city or county funding, because that buy-in from not only like city and county leadership, but also from your tax base is super important. But these grants are kind of just a way to supplement, maybe go above and beyond those kind of basics.
That's right. And to really look at what we provide as a library as the connection and the hub of the community. And so it's win-win. We bring to the community brings to us.
Absolutely. And I do also just want to say, what county are you in again?
Monroe County, and we are the only library in Monroe County. So our city of Albia population approximately 3,700, and the county, Monroe County, 7,600 approximately. So
you have a pretty big service base then that you support.
Yeah, I mean, if you are looking at us as countywide, and that's what I tend to do, and what we tend to do, thinking that we are the only library in the county. So we look at the entire county as our service area, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you kind of mentioned that you had some sort of low-hanging fruit items that you thought these would be some changes we can implement to really support our community better and begin to build those community connections. Can you talk about some examples of those programs that you've done or changes that you've made and how you've used grants to fund that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just start with, I had in mind some areas for our library where we really needed to improve our service, in my opinion. And, it was really across the board for me. I felt that we had, and coming right out of COVID when I started, so let's just, make that clear. So it really wasn't a criticism as to how the library was, but really just how can we really come out with a bang coming out of COVID and really change our viewpoint in what we can offer the community. So I knew that we really had some areas operationally that we needed to improve. We were still on card catalog, so we really wanted to get the library management system going. And that was a big change, a huge change operationally that we needed to sell to ourselves, our trustees, our community. And it is going to cost a little bit of money in order to implement that, because we really were not focused previously on, technological advancement either in the library. So in order to really make that work, not only do we have to undergo that process of changing to the library management system and paying for that, but we also have to really upgrade all the technology in the library, every little bit, both the patron computers and the staff computers and software and equipment. We just didn't have that infrastructure to support what we wanted to do. So, and that funding was not really built in at that point, because that's not how we were operating. So that was one area, and I'll explain after I finish talking about the areas like where we first started to attack that. But the second area was our programming. We really were not doing any programming at all. So that was wide open, and an area where we really knew we wanted to start immediately to improve that. But we had no line item budget for any programming. So that was an area where, funding was really going to be an issue. We don't have anything to support the programming that we want to implement. And then just our facilities themselves, how do they really work with this idea of offering more programming or more opportunities to the community if it's not set up currently in order to do that? We have a historical Carnegie building. It's smaller. And as I already mentioned, we weren't really previously focusing on technological advancements in order to bring that. We did have patron computers, of course, and we had Wi-Fi that we were offering, but, we just really weren't expanded past that in terms of what we were offering to the community. So that was another area that really needed to be addressed, our facilities, and that we continue to address. So all three of those areas were things that right out of the gate, I was like, we need to do this, and we need to find funding to do this. So the first area that I think any library can look at is the low-hanging fruit, the local funding, the groups, the county, offices that or not offices, county betterment groups that offer funding for libraries that really are not a lot of reporting in terms of your grant when you get it. You do have to do the legwork in order to support what you're asking for and get whatever requirement support they are asking for, which is a little bit of legwork, but usually it's not extensive. And really, I think what's important is that, librarians or members of your friends group who may be applying for grants work the relationships at the same time, and maybe consider talking to the individuals who are part of those foundations or groups and seeing what their mission is. And then you can bring that, that win-win situation to fruition, where you are aligning your needs with what the foundation may be offering, or where they want to see improvements. Because sometimes it matters. If you're just going in blind and applying for some of that, and you don't know that the people who are on the boards of that foundation are really looking for technological advancements or programming advancements, and then you're giving them something else, well, you're less likely to get a greater amount of funding, or maybe no funding at all, because they're going to focus on applicants who are providing what may be their mission, and it may be an unstated mission. So really having yourself or other key players in your community that kind of feel that out and see like what are they interested in seeing, and then tailoring your applications in those instances. Because like I said, we had all those different areas and we had a lot of different places. So it allowed us to tailor to whatever a particular foundation or a funding group was looking to see and interested in funding. Right down to, we have our Catholic Church here that they have a Lenten lunch, and they were amenable to, seeing something that is for the children of the community. So it was very easy to present an application that was tailored to that, and refurbishing our all of our craft supplies and those kind of things that had been completely wiped out in a basement flood that we had right before I started. So, there was just so many different areas that we could look locally to, either businesses that had a giving foundation, or community foundations that had some sort of giving process, and we could kind of plan where we wanted to fit in those applications. Easy reporting typically on all of that, and easy application process as well.
So that was with those smaller ones. I took so many notes while you were talking, and a couple of things I want to circle back to. When you were first talking about getting the automation system up and running, and buying new computers. Do you think it's sort of an effective way to think about grant funding as sort of like a jump start or a test case, where you could maybe get a bigger grant to sort of get something up and running, demonstrate its value, and then find ways to work that into a regular budget down the road? So when it's time for new computers in 5, 6, however many years, 3, I don't know how fast computers get out of date anymore, but you could kind of be warning your city of that capital expense. But just kind of view it as like a jump start or a test case for a program.
Absolutely. The very first grant that I ended up applying for and that we received was billed, sold, marketed in that way, that this was going to jumpstart our process. It was not going to pay for everything, and it was not going to pay for our operational subscription to the management system. It was simply going to be a soft ease into the transition and make it more achievable for us at that time. So I think that is a really great way to use grant funding, and it's a great way to get buy-in from your community, to have them see the actual results of what you're doing. And then when it has value to the community, then it's easier to support that financially.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I also just want to take time, and maybe this will come up as we continue the conversation, to sort of call out what you said, and not in quite these exact words, but do your homework. Even if it's a smaller local, your Catholic luncheon example, don't just throw out a proposal because they said, hey, would the library have anything they want to do? Don't just throw them the first thing that comes to mind, but take a minute, do your research, figure out what matters to them, and then give them a proposal.
Yeah, I think it's great to find a balance in what you're doing with your grants, number one, or your applications. You don't want, I think maybe there's some hesitation because you don't want to get tied into something that's too much work, that maybe negatively impacts what you're providing operationally already. You have limited staff time, you maybe have limited expertise in the area of grants, applications, reporting. You're scared you're going to get in over your head. And I think that at every step, doing your homework, taking the time to sit down and review it, to anticipate what may be required for your reporting, to anticipate the expectations of the funding partner. They may have an expectation of advertising, for example, and if you aren't comfortable with being able to comply with their, the marketing requirements, that sort of thing, which I don't think anybody should be. It's all doable. It's just a matter of understanding it, gaining your confidence, and also making sure you read everything and you are fully aware of what you're stepping into in terms of the grant. So for example, we had a small local, I shouldn't say small, we received a small grant from a large local employer who has a foundation and a giving process. But before I simply just put out the request, I reviewed what their mission is. I reviewed their requirements in terms of marketing. They had a requirement you were not to market unless they gave permission to market. So if, for example, I had not read that, I may have marketed all over the place. Look at what we got. That would have irritated them because they clearly say they want to approve before you market that they have done that giving. And so you really want to make sure that you comply, because the next time you have something that you maybe want to approach that same foundation, if you've not complied with their requirements on the first one, are they going to be very likely to grant you any more funds? No, they're going to remember that, and they're going to say, I'm going to give my funds to somebody else, a partner who will, read through the requirements a little bit better and make sure they're complying. Now, we all make mistakes, and I'm sure a lot of these partners are fully aware that, we are doing our best with everything we have. So I'm not going to say that they would never, if you make a mistake along those lines, that a funding partner is not going to grant you any more funds, but it is something to consider. And I think it's something that, as you do more and more, you will get more confidence that you are fully capable of reading that stuff and understanding what the requirements are going to be on you as the library, or you as the individual who is signing your name and being responsible for complying. So yeah, doing your homework every step of the way is important. In the beginning, to see what is the mission of this funding partner that I'm asking for funds, and does this align with what they're doing? It needs to be a win-win for everybody. It needs to be a win for the library. It needs to be a win for that funding partner as well, because they have a mission too. And usually it's very easy to align for libraries. And that's one of the great things of why libraries can really take advantage of working with other funding partners, is because we represent a partner that a lot of these funding partners think is ideal. We are a direct connection to the community. We're already up and operating. We are, basically proven. We're under high regulation in terms of what we're doing. So there's very little risk to the funding partner that we are going to take advantage and abscond with funds and not use them appropriately, that sort of thing. So, so we represent really an ideal partner, I feel like, with a lot of funding partners, very safe and a direct connection to the community, where our whole mission as libraries is improving our community. So
I'm going to go out of order on our official question list here that we've been working our way through, but your answer to the last question kind of sent us down this road of downsides to funding projects with grants. And you mentioned, that mission alignment, and the time could also, like your time as the applicant could be part of that. You also touched on sort of capacity, so just because you get a few $1,000s to do something, doesn't mean maybe you could get that money, but doesn't mean maybe you should if you don't have the staff time right now to take it on, time or expertise to take it on. So are there other things that you would sort of caution people against as they're thinking about grants and funding projects in this way?
Well, I think that you really are going, if you're doing the homework and making sure that the mission aligns, then you're not going to be in any danger of getting somewhere where you didn't intend to go. But of course, knowing your funding partner for us as a library and your limitations in terms of what you can and can't do is very important. So if the funding that you're seeking requires you to do something that you cannot do based on legalities, or down to even to the ordinance level of your city, then that's important to know and understand, and not to sign on for something that you can't deliver based on the legal aspect of it. Or I'll give an example. There are some funding partners that do require you to be recognized as a 501c3. So for me, what that said to me is we didn't have a Friends Foundation, and we needed that. So that process has been started for us, and we're pending decision on that with our Friends Foundation. It represents something that you can apply for as a library and receive if you want to, but that's an area where you would have to decide, is that something that I want to obtain in order to open the doors to apply to more funding partners for additional funding, or is that something that I don't want to do because we don't have the appropriate infrastructure, our city financial officer isn't in favor of that, or something along those lines. it doesn't mean you won't have any grant opportunities. It's just another thing where if you're doing your homework, you're going to be just fine in terms of deciding, do you want to do that or not? The reporting, again, I can't say there's so many wide variety of reporting requirements that, yeah, it might require you to do something that you don't have the capability to do. You don't have the right software, for example. We had no software they were doing open source software when we started just for the regular operational. So if they require like QuickBooks or something like that, that would put an extra requirement onto our city financial officer that, of course, I would have to go and make sure that she was okay with that or could do it or could comply or could create the reporting that they need for the reporting requirements. So that piece of it is something that you want to be aware of. They're all different and they all have their own different requirements. And as long as you're looking into that, you won't find yourself in a position where you can't deliver. But that would be the thing that I would say, make sure you know and understand coming into it what the requirements are going to be.
I will kind of, now I'm going up to question 3 on our list. You mentioned the local funders, and I want to take a minute here to say that's working with local people, I think, is so important for many of the reasons you've already articulated. You're building the community from multiple angles. So if you've got a community foundation or a religious group or Kiwanis or Rotary or whatever one of those things are, that you can keep that money local. They love doing that, and that's so great for both that organization and for the library. So I think those local partners are not to be discounted by any means, but maybe have a sort of smaller stash of projects. You're not going to get, you probably wouldn't be getting $10,000-$15,000 from those organizations. So have some of those smaller projects in mind. But if you do have, are there other places that you would recommend people look for potential funders?
Yeah. Okay. So, in my opinion, when you're looking for funding, it really needs to be an ongoing and global thing that you're doing all the time. Number one, you can make the connections and the partnerships without seeking funding to all your local organizations that Sam mentioned, like your Rotary Club and any sort of foundation, club, group, anything in your community. I think it's worth it, knowing and understanding what they do, knowing their mission, exploring a little bit about their timelines for what they do every year. Now, we don't all have endless time, and I don't either, guys, but do what you can out of this. You do a little bit at a time. You might hit on something and you make one relationship and then it's easier. But the relationship, in my opinion, is both ways. You're seeing what you can do also for these groups. And I'm not saying that should be, now my mission is changed to serving one particular group. No, I'm saying generally we see how our missions might align and how we might do something where they feel supported as a part of the community, just like everyone gets that equal opportunity to be supported by the library. So we don't take on, some other foundation's mission or anything, but if there is somewhere where we can align and connect, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect and have everything be a win-win. And then they're going to be much more likely to say, hey, guess what? We are having these funds, or, it's part of our mission to support literacy, like our local Rotary Club did last year. Can we do something through your summer program to help out? And they were able to help us do our finale luncheon, basically. So these things are, mutually beneficial, and hopefully, when they have another situation where they feel maybe we can align together, then they will come together. So if you're having trouble just making those relationships, that's where I would say start there, start just reaching out, seeing what local foundations do, what local groups do, what they're all about, and just knowing about them does multiple things. It opens up the opportunity to partner, but it also opens up the opportunity for you to serve your community, where you can say, hey, you know what, you're interested in that? Guess what this group is or does? And you are then serving as a hub to your community. The next step, I would say, is looking and understanding what your local businesses are. It does multiple things. Number one, it helps us to help serve our communities, because we are here also with a mission being partly to help people looking for job seekers. We're helping, just helping our community in any way possible, helping our students. Maybe somebody's looking to do a project or an internship, knowing what the local businesses are, knowing what they're all about and how they're running. That's one thing. Then taking it a step further, you may find out, okay, this local business or this regional business has a foundation and they do giving. And it operates on it every 3 years, or it operates annually, and they're looking for people to fund and nobody applies for anything. So it's wide open. Or, they really like only to fund this type of thing. And then you can tailor it. So you start locally, go out regionally to your employers of your, service area. Also look statewide, look nationally, be part of all of the groups, the professional groups. I mean, we're not quite there yet. We're working on that right now. But, part of the funding that we actually did apply for, and some of that we were successful, came through our connection that you guys provide, where you say, okay, this group has some continuing education opportunities or a webinar, and I would attend those to trying to increase my own knowledge and skill level in certain areas. And then they would say, hey, think about this opportunity. There's an opportunity here where you can apply and get this type of funding. And I would just apply. And it was tailored to what we are doing. So it wasn't like I had to revamp our entire mission. It was already aligning with our mission. So for example, we got some funding the first summer program that I was a part of as a director. We had zero funding in terms of our line item budget. And so we partnered with Save the Children, and that opportunity came through the Rural Library Association. And I was trying to learn more about what we could offer and how we could do it on a basically no budget. And then that opportunity came up, and we got funding to do a summer lunch program and funding to do 100 days of reading, which really helped us because we didn't have any ability to provide incentives to the program. So that was a huge funding opportunity that brought money from outside of our community into our community. And it really just felt like something that we could partner with the entire community in order to bring some opportunities while meeting their mission individually of what they were trying to do, which is make sure children have, food opportunities during the summer when that might be an issue for some families, and also to promote educational and reading during those summer months where we have a little bit of that lag because the kids are not in school.
So in our last few minutes together here, I want you to talk a little bit about, it sounds like throughout your time there, you've had multiple plates spinning, right? You got a grant from these guys, you've got the Save the Children thing, you've got the automation system stuff rolling behind all of this. Can you give some practical advice for keeping reporting dates and funding streams and, some of that stuff? Like what are some of your methods for staying organized as you've got multiple grants you've applied for, you've received, you're done with? How do you sort of track all that?
Yeah, well, just first and foremost, I think it's important when you're working with this kind of thing to keep track of everything you do, and everything is documented. Even if you don't think you're going to need it, I document everything because in the end, if you are unaware of some requirement, then you're able to pull that information up easily. So even if you think it's not a requirement to document something, it's a good idea to go ahead and document it anyway, and just keep really good records on everything that you're doing. When we give out a prize, I try to, get a media release and take a picture of the patron or that person with that prize, just showing that everything is happening according to what we intend to happen. And I do think reading ahead about the requirements of reporting is very important to understand what you're going to have to do and when you're going to have to do it, using your calendar system for that. I take every opportunity. We had another grant that we did, which was the digital literacy courses. PLA and AT&T put on that, and probably some of the librarians saw that, maybe applied, I don't know, but that was a great opportunity for us. We were already partnering with our National Honor Society students to provide open houses for digital literacy in our library. So it really went hand in hand that we just stepped that up. Of course, before I applied, I contacted our National Honor Society leader, a teacher leader, and talked to her about, hey, look at this grant and we could do this. Would that be okay with you? Would it be okay with your students? Is this something that we could do together? She was on board for it. So we went ahead and applied, and together, without really using, we weren't using library operational time. We were using the time, but in mine to kind of oversee, but I wasn't facilitating. I did do a little bit of facilitation when the students weren't able to do it based on their schedule, but it was much less than me having to facilitate every digital literacy course. And in that, we were able to bring some new technology, some new smart screens to our newly working on revamping community room that we have had immediate use for other community groups that come in, and then they can use the screens. They can, for example, have large meetings with Zoom. It was a great way for us to bring those digital literacy services to the community to strengthen and create further partnership with our high school and our National Honor Society students of something that they were already kind of working on. And, basically we had to kind of make sure that we could comply with everything that we needed to do. And those were a lot. There were a lot of requirements for that. You had to have a certain amount of learners. You had to have a lot of reporting related to that. And every time we would have our workshops, I would address what we needed to do as quickly as possible. I would not leave it until the end to do it all at once, because I would utilize my memory and my knowledge and take care of it at that time, right when it's there in front of me. And I'm much less likely to miss something and not report on something if I'm handling it right up to date with when it's happening. So I would recommend that if you're doing reporting, to stay on top of it, to do it right in a timely fashion, and it should just move right along. And if you have an issue right at the beginning, you find you're not able to do something correctly, then you can work to resolve that, as opposed to waiting till the end, day before the report is due, and trying to get it done. So that's one thing about when you get into more extensive reporting, you really have to make sure that you have read that material, you understand the material, you know what you're supposed to do. You then take the steps to complete your reporting in a timely fashion, so you don't find yourself in trouble and whoops, I didn't do this.
Yeah, so get that meeting, maybe set a meeting with yourself on the calendar to say incremental reporting for AT&T grant, whatever it is. But I think that's really important. So often, we get so busy,
We get busy. I can't trust my memory.
Nope. So just document for yourself and stay on top of it. So last question I always like to ask when we do these kernels is sort of give me your elevator pitch. I'm a new librarian. I've got some work I can see I want to do. Why should I consider grant funding for getting it done? Why shouldn't I just bug my city and tell them it's a capital expense?
Oh, that's good. And, I hate to take up a lot of time, but I do want to mention that I have been responded to when I did some communication or applied for grants, like, hey, you need to go to your city, that sort of thing. And I think the important thing to remember is to never get too emotionally tied in with whether you receive a particular grant or not, or if somebody is not willing to grant you funding at that time, to simply understand that's not where they're at and try to still build the relationship. It's hard sometimes because you do get your heart tied up in some of these projects, and you really don't understand why some people can't see the benefit of that. But if you just look at it as a learning experience for you, every application that you do is going to help you to be better at that next application. You do want to take the time. You want to really make sure your writing is concise, is clear, because those are important things. If you stop for a minute, sometimes people think, and I think this is a background that I have that has allowed me to understand this, but you don't want to get too flowery and too out in the weeds about all the things you want to do and everything you're doing. You want to be very concise about your particular mission here and why this funding would work and exactly what you're going to put it towards, and make it as short and sweet and clear as you can, because they are getting a lot of applications and they just really want to cut to the chase quickly, understand what you're doing, and have it be clear and not be confused about anything. So that would be a recommendation that I did have in my notes that I didn't cover here today, is make sure your writing is clear and concise. You don't want to go off and fill too many words in. That doesn't do anybody any good. They have limited time to review your application. And I would say that's an important piece. Try to just look at it as a process of building up your skills in terms of your writing ability, your understanding of what these grant applications require. And even if you don't get the funding that time, to really be professional and pleasant no matter what, and just build a relationship in any way you can.
I think that that's really nice advice to end on. And yeah, I think too, maybe this is where we could issue a recommendation to say if something really is pivot, if your operations really pivot on something, maybe that's where you would not want to consider grant funding. If it's like, we need to do this, you know, for a legal reason or for something else, like, and you need to have funding secured, maybe a grant is not the way to do that, then to shift other parts of your budget around.
Yeah, absolutely. You should always try. And maybe if you're looking at it more globally, you can see areas where you can shift, as you talked about. But I do think, you know, as we started with, we can't rely on grants for funding our normal operations. And I think sometimes people are afraid to receive grants because they think that that will give a reason why normal funding will not come through. And I don't know. I hope that that is not the kind of thinking that any sort of, county or city would engage in, because the normal operation and funding of the library is essential, and that can't go away. Grants are not meant to fund your normal operations.
Absolutely. Well, I want to say thank you to you, Aimee, for your time today. This has just flown by for me. I haven't even looked how long we've been talking. And thank you for all your hard work that you've done in Albia. Folks really should go and visit Aimee. I mean, I'm going to flood your schedule with visitors, but it's just, to me, it was so encouraging to see how you looked at the library and you looked around the community and you said, we can fill a need here, guys. And you really got the staff on board with some really positive changes, and the board as well. So thank you for your leadership there and your vision casting for that library. So best of luck to you as you continue in all these efforts. And to those watching, feel free to browse through the YouTube channel or Iowa Learns for another kernel. We've got a bunch of them up there. So thanks again, Aimee, and thanks everyone for watching.